I saw Susan press a switch, and the doors closed behind me. The doctor turned and leaned his hands behind him on the control panel. Barbara had her back half turned to me. "Ah, yes," said the doctor in a businesslike way. "We've been waiting for you, young man." I crossed the control room and sat down in the armchair. "Chesterton," he muttered, "and Miss Wright." She turned and faced him, and then sat down on a low stool near the ormolu clock. Susan folded her arms and looked from one to the other of us. "I can't promise either of you to return you to your planet Earth. I have said that before, and I repeat it now. The TARDIS, although excellent in many respects, does have one or two faults in it. I can never, for example, plan a journey with any accuracy. Both of you, if I may say so, have carried yourselves very well. Intruders, you started out, but it has been as friends and companions that I recognize your values." He left his place by the control column and walked over to the double doors. "Now, outside these doors," he said, turning, "we know there is a world, and a very interesting one. The people are delightful, and there is much to do. It would be a very full life and a very satisfying one. To build a planet, Chesterton. Now, there's a challenge for you." I inclined my head in agreement. "Less than 100 people to populate it and tame it? You would be assured of a good position in such a society." Barbara said, "You make it sound very attractive." "I mean to," he said. "For what can I offer you? Constant danger, no permanence, a life of drifting from place to place, searching perhaps for the ideal and never finding it? Mind you, if you wish to stay with us, Susan and I agree we would be glad of your company. If, on the other hand, one or both of you prefer to stay, then we shall be dreadfully sorry," finished Susan for him, and he nodded agreement with a sharp move of the head. There was a short silence while Barbara and I looked at each other. I thought there was a tiny smile on her lips. I know there was one on mine. "I'll let Barbara decide for both of us," I said. The doctor frowned. "Why?" "Because the man," I murmured, "always asks the woman if she is willing." I saw something move in her eyes, and a faint blush tinged her cheeks. The light made her eyes glisten, and I knew she was remembering everything she'd told Christess in the wood, and knowing I must have overheard it. The doctor looked at her briefly, then directed his gaze at me. It was not at all unkindly. "It seems to me," he said gently, "that the young lady hasn't made up her mind." I waited. Barbara said, "Can we stay with the doctor, Ian?" I saw Susan and her grandfather smile at each other. I got up and walked over to Barbara and took her hand lightly. I felt her fingers pressing into mine. Asking for comfort? Affection? I still didn't dare hope it might be love. Only time could tell. I turned and faced the doctor with a smile. "We stay with you," I said.
And that jarring cacophony tells you you're back with the Power of Three podcast. And in a very rare moment, a bit like Castrovalva, we've had a pre-credit sequence, as you heard an introduction there from Doctor Who and the Daleks, target novelisation, read by the late great William Russell. I'm Kenny Smith, and today we are going to stay on target, as they say in Star Wars, and we're going to be looking at the Target audio range. And I'm joined today by a man who knows a thing or two about it. You better introduce yourself, man who knows a thing or two about it.
Hello, Kenny. I'm a man who knows a thing or two about the BBC Audiobooks Target novelisations. I'm Michael Stevens, and I'm the range editor for BBC Audiobooks Doctor Who.
And of course, we're about to get a very special release with Doctor Who and the Loch Ness Monster, as it sort of marks us coming full circle.
I see what you did there. Yeah. It's very special. It's very special. It's been waiting in the wings for a long time, the Loch Ness Monster, because as you know, it's one of the earliest published Target novelisations, and it's our final entry into this huge long line, this unbroken chain of novelisations of the TV episodes, and the chain starts with the Daleks, Doctor Who and the Daleks in 1964, and it goes all the way through to Rose in 2005. So every television story between those spans is now available as an audiobook novelisation, and the Loch Ness Monster is the final piece in the chain.
Which is a very exciting chain, because I remember when this range was first announced, I was all excited and just thought, fantastic. And also there's an element of, why hasn't this been done before?
Indeed. And it had been done, say, 10 years before we started in earnest. There'd been the abridged readings with John Pertwee, Peter Davison and Colin Baker, which are lovely recordings, and thank goodness we have those. But that was a limited run, 6 stories. And other than that, it hadn't really been done before. And at the time that we started, to 2005, I wasn't entirely sure whether it would catch fire because, at that time, the Target books, they were a thing in the dim and distant past. New Doctor Who had just come along. Everybody was really excited about it. Obviously, the classic series was still very present in terms of DVD releases, but the Target books, they almost seemed dispensable, I think, back then to many people, because, if you look at it in a very binary way, you say, well, what need have we of paperback novelizations now? We've got the DVDs. If I want to experience The Rescue or Spearhead from Space, I can just put the DVD on. I no longer have to pick up the book and read how everything was.
I'm just thinking actually to the Pickwick version of State of Decay, and I've got the theme tune for that going through my head at this moment, and no.
Yeah. Once you get that earworm, it's very difficult to get rid of.
Yeah, thankfully, it has now gone.
Yeah, you're right. We did have the Pickwick talking book as well. No, but I think that, what I'm trying to say is that at that point, I didn't know whether people would be sufficiently interested in the novelizations, but of course it turned out that they were. We still are. Everybody now remembers and recognizes just how important those novelizations were, and so I think we did it just at the right time, and maybe we helped, maybe we contributed towards the renaissance of the Target books, because it was just a few years later that BBC Books themselves started to reissue some of them, and I think therefore it's happened just at the right time, and it's meant that we've been able to carry on, and we've picked up a really loyal audience.
The thing that also strikes me with my work now in the public sector is, accessibility is a big part of what we do.
Yep.
And this is bringing the target books to people who are visually impaired as well, which is, again, something that people may not automatically think of, but it's one of those things. It's one of the first things I think of these days when I'm doing anything.
Absolutely. And that is so true. It enables these books to be experienced by people who, for whatever reason, can't so easily pick up a visual document and enjoy it. And so, yes, that's absolutely correct.
Lovely. Now, throughout this episode, we're going to be dropping in some highlights from the range that you've picked out. I mean, you did have a whole load that I know you wanted to include, but with a gun against your head, I've forced you to pick a few.
I wanted to include them all.
Yes, I know, but that would have taken a hell of a long time to get those bits of audio together and ready. But the first one we're going to hear is from Doctor Who and the Auton Invasion. So we'll hear that now. And when we come back, you can tell us a little bit more about why you've got this one as a favourite.
Okay, bring it on.
In the High Court of the Time Lords, a trial was coming to its end. The accused, a renegade Time Lord known as the Doctor, had already been found guilty. Now it was time for the sentence. The Doctor looked very out of place, standing amongst the dignified Time Lords in their long white robes. To begin with, he was quite a small man. He wore an ancient black coat and a pair of check trousers. He had a gentle, rather comical face, and a shock of untidy black hair. But there was strength in that face too, and keen intelligence in the blue eyes. A hush fell as the president of the court rose and began to speak. "Doctor, you have been found guilty of 2 serious offences against our laws. First, you stole a TARDIS and used it to roam through time and space as you pleased." "Nonsense," said the Doctor indignantly. "I didn't steal it, just borrowed it for a while." The President ignored the interruption. "More important, you have repeatedly broken our most important law. Interference in the affairs of other planets is a serious crime." Again the Doctor interrupted. "I not only admit my interference, I am proud of it. You just observe the evil in the galaxies. I fight against it." "We have accepted your plea, Doctor, that there is evil in the universe which must be fought. You still have a part to play in that great struggle." At once the Doctor began to look hopeful. "You mean you're going to let me go?" "Not entirely. We have noted your interest in the planet Earth. You have visited it many times. You must have special knowledge of that world and its problems." "I suppose I have," agreed the Doctor. "You will be sent to Earth in the 20th century time zone. You will remain there for as long as we think proper. And for that time, the secret of the TARDIS will be taken from you." The Doctor was indignant. "You can't condemn me to exile on one primitive planet in one particular time." The President's voice was cold. "We can, and we do. That is the verdict of this court." A new thought struck the Doctor. "Besides, I'm known on Earth already. It could be most embarrassing for me. Your appearance has changed before. It will change again. That is part of your sentence." The Doctor continued to protest. "You can't just change what I look like without asking me." "You will have an opportunity to choose your new appearance," said the President patiently. "Look." As if by magic, a huge screen appeared on one wall of the court. Upon it, the Doctor saw a wide variety of faces and forms. At once, the Doctor started to make trouble. He rejected each one with the utmost scorn. Too thin. Too fat. Too young. Too old. No, I certainly don't want to look like that, I can tell you.
So we go, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, what a momentous moment that is. And I absolutely love Caroline's reading of it, and her interpretation of the Time Lords there, and indeed of the Doctor. And it's a rare example, isn't it, of a moment from the series which was novelised twice. Because here we have Terence Dicks borrowing the end of the War Games and putting it onto the start of the Auton invasion as a scene setter. And then, I think it was perhaps 5 years later, when Malcolm Hulke then novelised the War Games, he also, of course, had to finish with the trial scene. So we have that scenario novelised by two different people. I think this is a really key book because it was the first Third Doctor book, and the range was still in its infancy, and it's such a solid retelling of Spearhead from Space. And of course, it's an example of one of those stories that got retitled. As far as we know, that was due to Richard Henwood's influence. He was the editor of the range at the time, and he felt that certain TV story titles just perhaps didn't have sufficient oomph to sell a book off the back of.
Strange, isn't it? But I think Spearhead is a great word. I think that Spearhead from Space. That, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but Auto Invasion is also good.
Yeah, I was reading a blog article recently by Simon Guerrier where he examines this, and he has the theory that it was all to do with the monsters. I mean, perhaps obvious, but the feeling was, with the cave monsters. Apparently the Sea Devils was going to be called the Sea Monsters, but they decided not to retitle that one. So yeah, all to do with the flagging up the monsters that people would remember from the television.
Yep. Now you mentioned Caroline John there, and of course she's reading a story that she appeared in, but you've got some fascinating info about the variety of speakers and readers that we've got there, because there's a really good mix over the years. We've had doctors, had companions, guest stars, and generally it's a really, really good mix in there as to people with a connection to the story in many, many cases.
Yes, that's what I've tried to do all along for the most part. I haven't slavishly followed the rule, but I think, if there is somebody who was in the original cast who has been available to read, then that's always a really nice touch. We have had, I think it's 61 readers at the last count. That is of novelizations of the classic series, the original series. And of those, there are 18 TV companions and 5 TV doctors: John Pertwee, Tom Baker, Peter Davison, Colin Baker, and Paul McGann. And
they all bring their own different things. I mean, you've got some fantastic voices. I mean, some of whom we've lost over the years. People like William Russell, and in fact, you'll get somebody like Xenia Merton to do Marco Polo, inspired.
Yeah, that was really special. Xenia reading that, because we recorded that. It's perhaps about 5 years ago now, and she was able to record it, even though she was quite ill at the time, and I think Xenia knew that it would perhaps be her last professional job, but she really wanted to do it, and I believe, even though the stage of her life that she was in wasn't the best, I believe she enjoyed the experience of doing it, and it's marvellous that we have her telling the story forevermore.
Yeah. Also of note is that there's some releases have had a second voice in them, usually Mr. Nicholas Briggs or Mr. John Leeson.
Absolutely. Nicholas Briggs has clocked up a total of 24 individual titles upon which he appears. And for the most part, that's him voicing either the Daleks or the Cybermen. But he has also, of course, read 2 books in their entirety, because he read The Revenge of the Cybermen and he also read The Power of the Daleks. And Nick is a terrific reader, but he's also been a huge part of this range with his Dalek and Cybermen contributions. And then there's John Leeson, of course, who he's clocked up 19 titles. And again, some of those are simply contributing K9's dialogue, but several are him reading the entire books. And John is also a lovely, characterful reader.
Also worth noting that one of your readers is Mark Gatiss when he did Planet of the Daleks, which I think is one of his favourite stories of all time. And he also owns John Pertwee's jacket from that story as well.
Did he wear it when he was recording?
That was my next question.
I know he didn't, because I can see in my mind's eye the photo of him in studio. I wasn't there, but I think David Darlington actually produced that one. And I can see the photograph of Mark sitting with a copy of the book, and he's got a very fetching orange pullover on. So he didn't
that would clash.
That would clash. He would never make that sartorial mistake. Great reading from Mark. I've never managed to get him back.
At least you got him. Better to have than to have not. So, yeah.
Yes.
So, shall we move on to our third guest reading today? And this is going to be from Doctor Who and the Highlanders.
Whoopee! Ben yelled. Now let's get back to the TARDIS. Do you know where it is? Said Polly. Ben nodded. You bet. Just over the hill there. TARDIS? Jamie looked at them. Polly smiled. You'll understand in time. Aye, Jamie shook his head. There's much I do not understand. Where did those contracts vanish to? Yes, Doc, said Ben. Where did they go? The doctor backed away from them. I haven't the foggiest idea, he said. Unless... He felt in his pockets. Ben and Polly looked at each other. They knew exactly what was coming. You old fraud, said Ben. Well, said the doctor, imagine that. He extracted 3 large parchment sheets from his pocket and proceeded to tear them into shreds. Come on, Doc, said Ben, we must go. What about Jamie, said Polly. We can't leave him here. Ah, true, said the doctor. The ship has gone, and he won't get far on these moors. Polly turned to Jamie. What will you do, Jamie? She said. Oh, said Jamie, I'll be all right. They never will catch me. There was another ragged chorus of muskets a little nearer this time. Hear that, said Ben. If we don't move fast, they'll catch us all. Polly turned to the doctor. Can Jamie come with us, Doctor? The doctor looked doubtful for a minute, and then his face cleared. Well, if you promise to teach me all you know about the bagpipes. Jamie nodded. If that's what you want, Doctor. Ben groaned, putting his hand to his ears. That's all we need aboard the TARDIS, he said. Polly took Jamie's arm. Come on, Jamie boy. They hurried off, following the track that they had taken down the hill, which now seemed a long, long time ago. As they came into the hollow where they had left the time machine, it seemed for a moment as if the TARDIS had disappeared. Then, through the clustering brambles, they made out the familiar blue shape of the police box. Ben pulled away some brambles, the doctor waved his hand, and the door slid open. It seems all right, said the doctor a little fussily. I'd better check the engines. He went inside, followed by Ben. Jamie, suddenly afraid of the strange-looking object, hung back. He was going with these strange people into something he only dimly comprehended. Where would they take him? Would he ever see his native glen again? As he hesitated, Polly turned back and grasped his hand. Don't be afraid, she said. It's much nicer inside than it is out. There's so many wonderful surprises waiting for you. You'll see. Jamie allowed himself to be drawn through into the small police box. The door closed behind him, and he saw, to his astonishment, the large, hexagonal, brightly lighted interior of the time machine.
So, Michael, why did you choose this one for us?
Well, I thought it would be nice to include one of the stories where a companion joins, and I think endings don't scream "now read on" much louder than that one does. A lovely way for Jerry Davies to bring Jamie on board and then point towards all the wonderful adventures he's going to have. And we know, he doesn't know, and neither does the Doctor, but we know he's going to be one of the most long-staying companions aboard the TARDIS. So, yes, it's a companion joining moment. I also wanted to showcase the beautiful reading talents of Annika Wills, who's been one of our mainstays, largely reading the stories from the era in which she appeared, of course. So if you look at the end of season 3 and the bulk of season 4, you'll find that Annika is reading many of those novelizations. She's done 7 in total. She's a really popular reader in the range, and I think people really appreciate her warmth, her joyfulness, but also she's terrific at conveying the drama and the suspense of a moment. And it's lovely, you know, not only Annika, but Katie Manning and others, Nicola Bryant, Bonnie, they all, when they're called upon to recreate the lines that their characters say in these stories, they're terrific at harking back to how they sounded on TV, you know, what amounts to many years ago now.
They are fantastic. Now, something that you have got there is a handy guide on where to begin, because I'm sure there might be some people tuning in today who should have listened, but maybe they haven't, to some of the releases. And you've got a handy little guide to the galaxy of stories that you've done.
Yes, I sort of put this together when I realised that we wanted to celebrate this achievement of an unbroken run. And so, yeah, I mean, just really for fun, we haven't published this anywhere, but I sort of thought, well, if you were starting the range, if you were coming afresh to the range, and where would you begin? Well, maybe you'd want to pick up with stories featuring Daleks. So, you know, we've got Dalek stories right from the very first one all the way through to Revelation of the Daleks, if you're just talking about the original series. Cybermen, same. You can start with the Doctor in the 10th Planet. You can go all the way through to Silver Nemesis. And along the way, you know, you get some real of the series big hits, you know, Tomb of the Cybermen, Earthshock, etc. Maybe you're interested in history and you'd like to go and explore some of the Doctor's adventures in history. You know, we've got that. We've got the Aztecs, the Mythmakers, the Highlanders, the Visitation. Then there's stories about the invasion of Earth. So many over the years. Many of which actually have invasion in the title. You've got the invasion, the Auton invasion, the dinosaur invasion, the android invasion. You can cut it so many ways. You can cut it in terms of stories about featuring regeneration. So every regeneration is covered, isn't it? Usually with the 2 books, the last one of the preceding Doctor and the first one of the next Doctor. You've got companions leaving, companions joining. So yes, I had fun putting that together.
You've just mentioned companions leaving. So, why don't we hear our next extract, which is from Doctor Who and the Hand of Fear.
Sarah marched back into the control room. She was wearing her outdoor coat, carrying a hold-all, and clutching a stuffed owl she'd acquired somewhere on her wanderings. The doctor looked up and nodded approvingly. "All ready, I see. You're a good girl, Sarah." "It's too late to apologize, Doctor. Everything's packed and I've just got to go." "That's right," agreed the doctor sadly. "How did you know?" Sarah stared at him. "Know what?" "I've had the call to Gallifrey. I can't take you with me, Sarah. You've got to go home." Sarah's anger faded as she realized that the doctor meant what he was saying. She'd only been half serious in her threat to leave, and was quite expecting the doctor to talk her out of it with the promise of a trip to some fabulous planet. "Oh, come on, Doctor. I can't miss Gallifrey. I was only joking. I didn't really mean it about leaving." Her eyes widened. "Look, you're not going to change again, are you?" "No, not this time, Sarah. There must be some kind of emergency back on Gallifrey. I don't know what's going to happen." "You're just playing one of your jokes," said Sarah hopefully, "trying to make me sorry I lost my temper." "No, Sarah. I've received the call to Gallifrey. As a Time Lord, I must obey. I've got to go home." "Alone?" "Alone." The TARDIS vibrated slightly and the centre column became still. "Wondered, Sarah," said the doctor gently. "I'll give your love to Harry and the Brigadier, and I'll call Professor Watson and tell him you're all right." "I said we've landed." "Where?" The doctor smiled. "Believe it or not, South Croydon. Hillview Road, to be precise." "I can't believe it," said Sarah wonderingly. "After all this time, you've finally managed to get me home." There was a pause. Then Sarah said, "Yes. Well, I'd better be off then." The doctor touched a control, and the TARDIS door swung open to reveal a tree-lined suburban street. Sarah took a deep breath and headed for the door. "Goodbye, Doctor. Don't forget me." "Goodbye, Sarah. Don't you forget me either." Sarah disappeared through the door and it closed behind her. The doctor's fingers moved busily over the controls, punching up the course coordinates that would take him back to Gallifrey. "Goodbye, Sarah. Till we meet again." The doctor paused for a moment and then threw the takeoff lever. With a wheezing, groaning sound, the TARDIS disappeared from the suburban street corner where it had so briefly materialized. A small, shaggy dog, ambling down the tree-lined road on some business of its own, pricked up its ears in astonishment and barked suspiciously. Sarah looked round the quiet street, trying to get her bearings. This isn't Hillview Road. It isn't even South Croydon. Sarah smiled. For all the doctor's confidence, the steering of the TARDIS had stayed obstinately erratic to the last. "He blew it," she said softly. She patted the dog. "Hey, you. He blew it." The dog panted amiably, wagged its tail, and went on its way. Whistling to keep up her spirits, Sarah set off to catch the bus home.
What a sad departure that is.
Sob. Yes, I know. I find it packs just as much emotional heft off the page as it does on screen, doesn't it? Beautiful reading there by Pamela Salem. And that's an example of a reader who wasn't associated with that particular story on television. However, as most of your listeners will know, The Hand of Fear is from season 14. Pamela did feature later on in that season, both as a voice in The Face of Evil and as Toos in The Robots of Death. And somehow, I was just kind of thinking around that era, and I thought, I think that would be a really nice fit for Sarah's departure story. And I think it would work really nicely. And of course, Pamela herself is no longer around now, so I'm really pleased that she was able to record that. And a shout out there, I think, for the lovely accompanying music from Simon Power, who, for the bulk of all of these novelisation audiobooks, provided sound design. Everything from the TARDIS effects, takeoff, landing, and to weaponry and explosions and all sorts of weird and wonderful atmospheres. So yes, Simon and latterly David Darlington has taken on the mantle of sound designer, but Simon did do the majority of them.
Definitely worth giving a shout out to the work that's done. It's so subtle what the sound designers, musicians do, and it just really sort of enhances the atmosphere. I know, having done little bits here and there, how awkward it can be to do a 3.5 minute section to bring that alive in a podcast. So to be able to do that across a whole book is fantastic, real skill.
It is a skill, and I think it took some refining. I think it took some honing, and I think it is important to be subtle, because we are there at the end of the day. We're there for the voice, we're there for the words, but I think it really does add something to have the reading supported by a subtle level of sound design. Yeah, and so there we are, Sarah's leaving story. And it's a great thing about the books, isn't it? You get to a key moment in the series, and you think, well, yes, it's sad, but I could go back and read them all now, or listen to them all, or if somebody joins, you sort of have that foresight thanks to the books. You think, oh yeah, I can think ahead to all of the adventures that character is going to have. It's the same with watching the TV series, of course, but the books, I think of them as operating in their own little pocket universe, because after all, there are quite a few diversions from the TV episodes, as we know, aren't there?
Absolutely. You're thinking Doctor Who and the Daleks, you're thinking Doctor Who and, well, I was going to say Colony in Space, but you know what I mean. Yes, there's all those little bits of Joe getting to arrive twice and things like that. Yeah,
absolutely. That's absolutely what I'm thinking of, those instances. And, occasions, this happened later on in the range, didn't it, where writers felt they had freer rein to just move away from the script a little bit and look upon things with a little bit of flair when it comes to how they present the events on the page.
Yeah, definitely. Now, talking of writers getting the chance to show off their work and particularly focusing on their own work, we're now going to hear an excerpt from Full Circle.
Lovely.
The Doctor had lost the trail, he was sure of it now. The TARDIS could have been taken in any direction, he speculated, as he emerged from a particularly thick clump of trees to find himself standing on the ridge of a wide valley. Below him, through the mist, he could just discern the imposing metallic bulk of the Starliner. As good a place as any to start looking for the TARDIS, the Doctor decided, and he started down the grassy slope towards the vessel at a brisk trot. Behind him, unnoticed, the Marsh Child scampered timidly from its hiding place among the trees and followed after him. The closer the Doctor got to the Starliner, the more defined became its shape. It was a most impressive vessel. Much of its design appeared to be of a decorative rather than functional nature, betraying its purpose as a commercial pleasure liner. It was not a streamlined craft. It sat on a flat base, with two enormous barrel-like protrusions angled downwards at the front of the ship, and two angled downwards at the rear for controlled directional thrust, and two even longer barrels, which projected horizontally from the rear for forward thrust. The Doctor also noticed, between these two rear thrusters, a large, ornately fashioned spherical engine outlet. The Doctor assumed, correctly, that this outlet would have less thrust than any of the others, but that it was probably manoeuvrable to any angle and would be used for steering the ship, making it the most important outlet of all, despite being the smallest. The Doctor rather liked that notion. In time, he found himself at the boarding ramp beneath the staggeringly large nose of the craft. Wiping his feet on a patch of grass and adjusting his scarf in a way that he hoped would make him look presentable, the Doctor then started up the ramp. Coming to the large metal panel that was the boarding door, he gave it a firm rap and called out, "Hello?" He waited, tapping his feet. Nothing happened. He tried twice more without result, then examined the hull to either side of the door. He muttered to himself. No doorbell. Pity, pity, pity. Ah! His eyes fell on a small red panel of metal within the narrow alcove of the doorway to his left. He pressed it, and it popped open to reveal an array of buttons. An attempt at using them confirmed his expectation that they had been deactivated. The Doctor dipped into his capacious pockets and produced a short, rod-like electronic device with a miniature parabolic dish at one end. His sonic screwdriver. As he set about adjusting the settings, he muttered, "Doctor, if I didn't know any better, I would say that we are being made to feel very definitely less than welcome. Really, how shocking. I quite agree, it is shocking, Doctor." The Doctor lifted the sonic screwdriver, pressed it against the spread of buttons and activated it. It whined. "I do believe I hear a doorbell," said the Doctor, and the panel before him slid up to reveal to him the empty expanse of the boarding area. He stepped inside, invigorated by the warmth. "Anyone at home?" the Doctor called out. "Anyone?" He waited. No one. His eye fell on the tallyman's desk. On it sat the ledger, a few knives and harvest tools, and a couple of river fruits. The Doctor sidled over to the desk, picked up one of the knives, and examined it. "They seem to have maintained a pretty sound grasp of metallurgy, at least," he remarked for no one to hear. "Very encouraging." For the want of something better to do, he stabbed the knife into one of the river fruits. It went in deep and remained there. A viscous juice dribbled from the wound. The Doctor lifted his head. He thought he heard movement from one of the two passageways that led off from the area. "Hello!" he called again, and moved into the passageway.
Now, of course, this was novelised by Andrew Smith from his own work, and he's a fantastic guy. Did you have much in the way of dealing with him in terms of getting this prepared?
I didn't when we came to do this audiobook, but I have had dealings with Andrew from when he wrote an original story for the Big Finish Audio Go collaboration that we did.
Vengeance of the Stones.
Absolutely, when he did Vengeance of the Stones for the Big Finish Audio Go collaboration that we did many years ago now. So yeah, great chap, terrific writer, I think, and this book really stands up as one of the best novelizations in the whole Target range, and yet it was Andrew's first book, and you and I were speculating earlier who his editor would have been at the time, and we thought perhaps it would have been Christine Donovan. I don't know how hands-on Christine was at the time as an editor, but it seems to me that the writing of this book is really sure-footed, or should that be sure-handed? So yeah, really, really good. And I remember when this came out, being really impressed by it and really enjoying the take on the story, which is very faithful to the TV episodes, and yet it's also expansive because it starts with that sequence that we never saw on television of the Starliner crashing into Alzarius, and it introduces the crew of that ship. And of course, they're doomed, so we don't see them later on. But yeah, lots of lovely detail in this book.
Well, I was about to say, this is a surprise to you, but no, it's not, because you already know that we're now actually going to hear from Andrew, who's going to talk us through the process of adapting his script into a novelisation. So not a surprise for you, Michael, but hopefully for everyone else.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what he's got to say.
I'm Andrew Smith, and I wrote the novelisation of my TV serial Full Circle.
So I'd imagine that you were somebody who'd been reading Target novelisations throughout the years, getting them from Rutherglen Library and owning them as well.
Not from the library, I always bought them. But well, in fact, the very first ones I got. So in 1975, I think it was October, so I would have been 13, and I was having a holiday weekend in Blackpool with the family. Went to the Doctor Who exhibition in Blackpool, went down the stairs into the exhibition, was wowed by it, and then at the end there was a shop, and I saw these things that I came to know were Target books on the display, and I bought my first Target books. Doctor Who and the Cybermen, which was the novelisation of the Moonbase. Doctor Who and as I remember, Doctor Who and the Giant Robot, and Doctor Who and an Adventure with the Daleks was my first three, as I recall, and loved them. And then I just worked my way through them. And of course, as people know, they were our VHS at the time, because the show wasn't repeated. You didn't see it again. You see the occasional repeat, maybe an omnibus repeat, very occasionally. But that was our way to revisit the series going forward, and until about 1980, really, when I became involved. That when VHS was coming in, and I'm not sure when the first VHS tapes were. It was a little late, early in the 80s, I think. Robots of Death and Revenge of the Cybermen.
Revenge of the Cybermen, I think, was 84 that came out.
That was very exciting. But until then, what we had were Target books. And so I'd written Full Circle. So I was approached initially for my permission for Terence Dix to write it. But I said, no thanks, I'd like to do it myself. I did. And at that time, Terence was writing, I think, all of them. And then, funnily enough, I'd seen other writers had the very same idea. Steve had the same idea, Steve Gallagher. And then, and Chris Bidmead did a very good job on Legopolis and Castrovalva. But it became more of a thing for the original writer to write the book. And it was a treat to get to do it. I love writing prose as well. But of course, for me, it was a thing. God, I've written Doctor Who. Now I'm doing a bloody Target book. How about that? Woo!
Yeah, I mean, the excitement for somebody who's sort of grown up reading them, it's something to imagine that delight of getting the chance to do it and getting to come up with your own description of the Doctor, the console room, Romana, K9, all these things that we've come to know how Terence does them. So
yeah,
here's your chance.
Adding a little body to it as well. I mean, I loved Terence's stuff. I did feel by that time he was kind of writing in and kind of putting he said, she said on the dialogue, and there wasn't a lot of depth to it. I remember being very disappointed by novelizations of Robots of Death and the Talons of Weng Chiang that were slim and not very detailed. And I wanted to write something that had a bit of detail. In fact, I only discovered when the audiobook came out a few years ago, very well narrated by Matthew Waterhouse. The insert in the CD case had a piece from David Howe in which he said that the font had actually been reduced in the paperback, in the book of Full Circle, so that it would fit the 100 and 140 pages, was it? Or 120? But to get into the word count, to get into page count, they reduced the font size, which I wasn't aware of. That's the first I knew about that. But I think, I did add detail, and it wasn't just, Adric said, Varsh said, the Doctor said. There was more to it than that, with some additional scenes, some extra explanation. But for example, Nefrid actually going into the bowels of the Starliner and just discovering the system files and reading the system files. But I wanted it to be detailed, and I actually wrote it with my copy of my own home recording of Full Circle next to me, so I could add some detail. Because I always, when I read the books, I wanted it to be a depiction of the TV serial, and I added a little bit of extra detail there, so that, for instance, in the scene where the Doctor and Romana are in her room early in episode 1 in the book, I include the Doctor picking up the book that he flicks through. That's in the novelisation, though it wasn't in the script. That's just a little bit of business on the day.
Brilliant. I love that sort of attention to detail. I suppose that, what would you have been doing around this time in your real life and to fit in the novelisation?
I'm trying to think when I wrote it, because it was actually delayed because I was going to write it, and then there was a strike. There's writers' industrial action. I think the Writers Guild was in dispute with W.H. Allen, who I think was a home publishing company for Target, and it was put off. I mean, this is where my memory's hazy. I seem to remember it being the best part of a year. It might not have been as long as that, but I didn't actually do any work on it, and I didn't write it until I could go ahead. And I was doing other things. I mean, I was writing comedy sketches, and I was doing plays for TV and radio, and I mean, I was commissioned for a story for Peter's first season that went to scene breakdown stage, but didn't get to script stage. I was doing that and various other things. I mean, there's a lot of things I was doing that were kind of in development, but like same today, you write things, go to development, and then don't go all the way. So my writing life, that's what I was doing. My personal life, I think I was engaged for a year, and living in Rutherglen.
Yeah. Would that have been the long-lost Torsen Triumvirate?
The Torsen Triumvirate, that was that story. Yes, that was it. Set on Earth and involved 3 aliens posing as humans trying to get 3 parts of a device together. So that's about all I remember. Yeah. Because I haven't got anything. When I was asked to write for Big Finish, I did have all my material for The First Centaurans, which was a story I was approached by Eric Saber to write for Colin about a year later, but I had nothing, and I have nothing for the Torsen Triumvirate.
Oh, but there we go. Just in case there's anybody out there wondering, oh, quick, get it to Big Finish. So just thought we'd get that one cleared up. So
I'm clearing out my loft next year when I move, and if I find it, I'll let you know.
Excellent. And Big Finish, of course.
Yeah.
Probably them first, because they'll pay you for it. I can't. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Of course, the book did come out, and you got that lovely cover as well, and that glorious orange.
Yeah.
Very distinctive on the shelf.
Yeah, they're doing different coloured spines by Andrew Skilleto, wasn't it? The cover?
Yep.
And I've got a clean copy of that actually hanging in my office. Yeah, nice. And I think I got to physically hold a Target book that had my name on it, which was good.
Yeah.
And it was Doctor Who, Full Circle, not the usual thing because of course we couldn't, Doctor Who and Full Circle and the Full Circle, no. So I was quite pleased with that actually. I think I always had a little bit of a feeling about Doctor Who and so that's quite nice.
And it's ironic that Doctor Who and the Silurians wasn't Doctor Who and the Silurians.
No, right. Yeah. Oh, that was the other thing, wasn't it? Yeah, with the early ones where they just give them totally different names, like the Cave Monsters or the Doomsday Weapon or the Auton Invasion, which had been spearhead from space and Colony in Space and things like that.
Doctor Who and the Marshmen, you could have been. You never know.
Doctor Who and the Marshmen. Yeah. Could have been Doctor Who and the Planet That Slept, of course, which is the original that I favoured for the TV serial. But again, there we go.
Can't have it your own way. And then, of course, years later, the book got a new life as an audiobook, as you mentioned earlier, read by Matthew.
Yeah. And and he did an excellent job on that. And it's quite nice for me, again, having not revisited the book in a while. It was bedtime reading one time for my older daughter when she was very little, and she asked me to make that her bedtime reading, and that was the first time I'd looked at it. So that would have been about 2005, when she was about 3 or no, maybe 4 or 5, so maybe 2006 or 7 or something. And reading a chapter or something to her every night. And so that would be the first time I'd read that in about 20 years. And I do remember actually thinking, this isn't too bad.
You weren't too badly scripted in yourself
that's
then.
That's not too bad, son, And yeah. I quite like the detail of it. Like, I've got to think that when Adric picks up K9 from the cave after he's had his head knocked off, and there's a spider crawls out of K9's open neck and crawls in his hand. Things I enjoyed adding details like that.
Things you couldn't quite have achieved on TV, but it
would have been difficult. It would have been difficult, and wouldn't have looked quite as good if we tried it either.
Yeah, I don't know how Matthew is with real life giant spiders, so we better not go there.
I've no idea. I mean, I'm not that great myself. I'm okay. I can handle spiders, and I do, but
yeah,
they're not my favourite animal.
No, them and snakes.
Usually. Well, I live right by the countryside as well. I get some monsters sometimes scuttle across my living room floor. Yeah.
That's why I'm glad I've got a cat who will pounce on them and eat them. So thanks, Neil.
I had one land. I was in the shower once, and I remember I was showering, and I caught this thing out the corner of my eye. It looked down, and there was one in my chest scrabbling in the water. And it's a huge thing. Well, bloody hell, where did that come from? I have no idea where it came. It obviously dropped from the ceiling, but
I feel ill.
I'm not too bad with them, but that one. I was like the woman in the Tom and Jerry cartoons who jumps on the stool with that one.
Yep.
It just, but spiders are quite a reliable thing to creep people out.
Yeah, it definitely works. Of course, something that I remember when the audiobook reading came out, and we did a piece for the Rutherglen Reformer, and you mentioned that there was a lost final chapter.
Yes, yeah. Initially, it was a very rubbish epilogue, which I had the Starliner getting lost, basically crashing on Alzarius again, which is absolutely rubbish. But and John said no. John Nathan Turner, the producer, said no. Let's not have that. Let's not have that. I think there is an epilogue of a sort though, or a follow up of a sort, because I wrote a thing for a book called The Doctor His Lives and Times. And James Goss was responsible for putting that together, and he approached me about doing things. So I've done a piece for that. Again, I can't remember all the details. It's been a few years since I did it, and it's a kind of a page and a half thing. But it's the decider's log, the captain's log from the Starliner after they leave Alzarius, and it's written as the captain's log kind of thing. So that's in there. God, yeah, I can't really remember what happens in that. It is about, I think, landing on another planet and re-establishing themselves, and I think, reflecting on what happened on Alzarius and the nature of them as a people not being Pterodonians and not really being proper Alzarians. Yeah. So that's out there. The epilogue, quite rightly, bit the dust. I have still got the manuscript in the loft, actually, with all my pen mark, my own annotations for myself. So of course it was typed at the time. I used this thing called a typewriter rather than this distracting thing called a desktop computer or laptop. The carbon paper and Tipex. Mm-hmm. So
Yeah, just that blue carbon paper underneath, and just creating a copy. Yep.
Yeah, every page of the script was 3 pages put in the typewriter with 2 sheets of carbon paper, so you had 3 copies right away. And you'd keep one, and the original would go off, in the post to the production office. Very different.
How things change.
Magic. Yeah. But good. I kind of miss that click, clack, 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 click, click. Oh, also, back then, not everyone could type. So that was a thing when you're trying to break in as a writer. It's quite nice when not everyone could type. Because I know the production office did get some handwritten stuff sent in as well, which didn't stand much of a chance. And also, I already knew from a steer I'd been given by Robert Holmes when I was in contact with him when he was script editor. I knew how to format a script. So again, that helped with me. I could type, and I could actually present a script that looked like a a TV script, and specifically a BBC TV script as well.
Fantastic. I got a typewriter for my 9th birthday, so that was quite good. So I learned to type very quickly and knowing how to push down those heavy keys.
Yeah, that's right. I got a typewriter when I was 7 for Christmas. And yeah. I'm a 2-finger typist, but I'm a very quick 2-finger typist.
Oh, I'm all 10, so...
Right, yeah, sure.
Hey, I needed to use it every day for my job. You didn't back then.
Well, yeah, I did. Well, I did eventually.
Yeah.
I was using it every day, and it was every day.
Yeah.
That's something I'm still not great at times, is taking days off.
Yeah.
Other things to get done in life.
Anyway,
yeah.
Andy, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat and telling us all about your memories of Full Circle, the novelisation.
My pleasure, mate. Anytime.
So yes, Andy, adding a little bit of horror there with that creepy spider out of poor old K9.
Yeah, that's right. And that's the kind of thing that an author can do when they're novelising their work, I suppose. I thought those spiders were pretty creepy on screen, actually, at the time.
I'm just miming it for the benefit of our non-YouTube viewers.
Very accurately, yeah. That kind of hand wobble says it all. So yes, and you can tell that he's relishing the chance to put everything down in prose form, and of course it's Matthew's first contribution to the audiobook range, Matthew Waterhouse, and they've got a lovely parallel story, haven't they? Andrew and Matthew, they were both teenagers. Full Circle was their debut in Doctor Who, and at the time they were photographed together for the press and so on. And great that the audiobook reunites them in a way. Matthew's one of, I think he's a really enthusiastic reader, and a very talented one as well.
Yeah, it was a total revelation, because I remember listening to this for the first time when you sent me a review copy many moons ago at the Rutherglen Reformer, when I was editor of the paper, and we featured the fact that this had been done as an audiobook adaptation, and had an interview in the paper with Andy about it. And I remember decorating my daughter's room while listening to Full Circle. So that's silly little memories that sort of lodge in the head about where I was when I listened to that.
Well, that is one of the unique things about listening to audiobooks, and I learned this many years ago. You can listen, if you listen when you are walking in a particular place, or if you're decorating, and I've done the same thing, I've decorated whilst listening, and then anytime I hear that again, or even just think about it, it triggers the memory, or vice versa. If you're decorating the next time, you sort of remember. It's funny how the brain works, but yeah, they do. That connection is made between what you're listening to and what you are doing at that time.
Yeah, it's like a good pop song. Just like a good pop song when you first time you hear it. So, but hey, yeah, that's for later on. We're not going to the good pop song yet. Another one that I remember listening to is when Katie and I had a weekend away. We went up to a cabin in rural Highland Perthshire, and we had it away and listening to the Five Doctors there and back, and she was loving it. She's not particularly a Doctor Who fan, but she really enjoyed it, and a fantastic reading from Mr. Culshaw. I suppose
terrific, yeah.
Something that of note. You've got a list of 5 significant novelisations there. Would you be here to talk us through them and why?
Yes, absolutely. So in my list of 5 significant novelisations, I went for Where It All Began. And that, of course, is the first ever Doctor Who novelisation by David Whittaker, which he was story editor of the very first season, of course. And just at the tail end of his tenure, he had the opportunity of being the person who would novelise Doctor Who, the Daleks, with Terry Nation's blessing. So that is the beginning of the journey, both for us as readers of these books and for Ian and Barbara, for instance, who join the TARDIS in that book and decide at the end that they're going to stay with the Doctor, and of course that just leads to more adventure. So that is, if ever there was a key book in the range, it's Doctor Who: The Daleks. I then picked the first Target book by Terrance Dicks, who is the range's most prolific author, and that is Doctor Who: The Auton Invasion, which we talked about earlier. Then, we mentioned earlier about later on in the Target publishing history, writers began to have a little bit more free rein with form. And so I thought, well, an example of that is a story told through letters and diary extracts, which is very unusual actually in the Target canon. But Doctor Who: The Romans by Donald Cotton, the Doctor Who and the Romans by Donald Cotton does just that. And you have Ian Chesterton writing to his headmaster back in the 20th century. You have Nero's diary. You have letters written home by a Roman centurion to his mum. And so this called for us to enlist the services of, I think it might be 7 readers, all doing the different forms of journal, as it were. And then I thought, well, what's the book where we have the most Doctors and Companions in together? You've mentioned it already. It is, of course, The Five Doctors, which was Terrance Dicks novelising his own script. And famously, I think that got published a week before the episode went on screen. So some people, if they had seen it in their bookshops, they were able to experience that story as a book before they'd seen it on television.
Including myself, I got it in the local Asda.
Ah, right.
And I was gutted when there was no scene of Susan in the future. It devastated London, or rebuilding London. It was like, where's that gone? Yeah, absolutely. I saw somebody had done an AI-assisted recreation of that. I saw that on online recently. But yes, so that's The Five Doctors. And then the 5th significant novelisation is the final piece in the BBC Audiobooks jigsaw, which completes this run of stories, and that is Doctor Who and the Loch Ness Monster. Talking of which, why don't we hear an extract from that?
With a strange, wheezing, groaning sound, the blue police box materialised on the bleak, windswept hillside. The door opened, and 3 people emerged. First came a very tall man, untidily dressed in a strange assortment of vaguely bohemian-looking garments. A long woolly scarf dangled round his neck, and a floppy hat was jammed on the back of a tangle of curly hair. He looked around eagerly, his eyes ablaze with interest. A broad, childlike grin spread over his face at the sight of the wild and unfriendly landscape. The 2 who followed from the police box didn't look quite so delighted. The first was a brawny young man, conventionally dressed in blazer and flannels. His handsome face with its square jaw, frank blue eyes and curly hair made him look like the hero of an old-fashioned adventure story. The slim, attractive girl who accompanied him shivered in the cold wind, turning up the collar of her jacket. The young man was Harry Sullivan. The girl, Sarah Jane Smith. Both stared accusingly at their companion, that mysterious traveller in time and space, known only as the Doctor. Sarah looked startled. "I thought you said we were returning to Earth." The Doctor abandoned his survey of the landscape to give her a look of guileless innocence. "This is Earth, Sarah." "If you say so, Doctor." She didn't sound too convinced. Suddenly, the blue police box winked out of existence. Sarah clutched the Doctor's arm. "The TARDIS! It's gone!" The Doctor sighed. The TARDIS, the initials stood for time and relative dimensions in space, was playing up more and more these days. As fast as he repaired one thing, something else went wrong. Thought I'd fixed that fusion plate, he muttered crossly. Must have gone on the blink again. Shan't be 2 seconds. He stepped inside the invisible TARDIS and immediately became invisible himself. Sarah and Harry watched unsurprised. Since beginning their travels through time and space with the Doctor, they'd seen so many strange things that the odd vanishing trick was nothing special. Sarah looked again at the windswept landscape. I don't care what he says. This isn't Earth. Harry said gloomily, probably some benighted planet right on the far edge of the galaxy. Sarah and Harry knew from experience that the TARDIS's destinations were always unpredictable, though this never seemed to affect the Doctor's cheerful confidence. The TARDIS reappeared, and so did the Doctor. He was wearing a strange-looking bonnet with a bobble on top, and the woolly scarf had been replaced by another, equally long, in a particularly vivid tartan. Native dress, he explained. We don't want to attract attention now we're in Scotland. How do you know? Asked Harry suspiciously. The Doctor breathed deeply of the clear, cold air. I can smell the tangle of the Isles. Besides, I've just checked the coordinates. Now, why has the Brigadier brought us here? Brigadier Alistair Lethbridge-Stewart was head of the British section of UNIT, the United Nations Intelligence Task Force, an organisation of which Harry Sullivan was a member. UNIT was dedicated to protecting Earth from the many attacks and invasions from outer space that had plagued it in recent years. The development of man's technology, to the point where the moon had already been reached, with interplanetary travel an inevitable next step, had attracted the attention of hostile forces throughout the galaxy. Most seemed to consider the Earth an attractive little planet, just ripe for conquest. UNIT had been formed to help Earth protect itself, and the Doctor was supposed to be UNIT's scientific advisor. Unfortunately, he hated being tied down to one place or time, and his habit of disappearing on prolonged trips around the galaxy was a constant source of aggravation to the Brigadier. Just before this latest trip, the two had reached a compromise. The Doctor had given the Brigadier a recall device, which could signal to the TARDIS whenever and wherever it happened to be. He had also given his promise to return to Earth whenever the signal was used.
In some ways, it's fantastic that going with the Loch Ness Monster as a way to round off the range, in the way that the DVD range did as well. It was the last complete story to be issued. So I just hope it's not an anti-Scottish bias there at BBC Audio.
No, no, it's a complete coincidence. I have seen some speculation, people saying, well, that's why we've kept it back, because that's what happened with the DVD range. That is a complete coincidence. I think it was several years ago now, I was looking ahead to the culmination of the range, and I thought it would be really nice to hold back something that really sort of epitomizes those early golden years of the Doctor Who target novelizations. And we hadn't at that point done the Loch Ness Monster, so I held it back to be the last one. I think I'm right in saying it was first published in 1976, so the range proper was just 3 years old at that stage. And they were still, as we said earlier, they were still retitling some of the books. So this was the novelisation of Terror of the Zygons. It's brilliant. It's really solid. It's you mentioned missing scenes from the Five Doctors. Well, this one has got its own missing scene because it was all planned and indeed filmed that we would see the TARDIS materialising and the Doctor, Harry and Sarah would emerge, and then the TARDIS would become invisible. Interestingly, just going off piece a little, that story is directed by Douglas Camfield, who'd also directed The Invasion in 1968, where almost the exact same thing happens. The TARDIS lands and goes invisible. So I don't know whose idea it was. However, due to technical difficulties, i.e. the sun kept going in, they couldn't make the effect work, so that sequence was deleted from the transmitted episode. It has since been rediscovered, and it's on the DVD release, but there it is in the target book, because of course Terrance Dicks was working from the camera script. It's a lovely book, and Heartland Doctor Who, Jon Culshaw gives us a splendid interpretation of it.
Jon has become a real discovery, hasn't he? Because I remember listening to that 5 Doctors, and then out comes his Brigadier, and it's like, whoa, where did that come from? Absolutely incredible.
I know. I mean, I can't claim to have discovered Jon Culshaw. However, I do think we were the first people to ask Jon whether he would consider reading an audiobook, and I just, obviously his skits on Doctor Who from Dead Ringers, both on radio and television, were very familiar, and I knew him for that, and I knew he could just so superbly do the 4th Doctor, for instance. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be marvellous if he was interested in reading a whole book? And so he agreed to try it with the Ark in Space, and the rest is history, because he took to it like a duck to water. He's a really accomplished reader, and not only is his 4th Doctor superb, but so is his 3rd Doctor, so is his Brigadier, and many other characters as well. So he's now read 14 stories. That's including the Romans, where he's just one of those multiple readers. So 13 full books, and 14 if you include the Romans. He just, with that 14th one, he just pips Geoffrey Beevers to the top spot, because Geoffrey has read 13 novelisations himself.
Fantastic. So we've been talking about Jon Culshaw. Just, it'd be very rude if we didn't ask him to join us now, wouldn't it?
Well, yes. I mean, why don't we?
Hello there, this is Jon Culshaw, Jonathan Culshaw, my full name, and I am a voice actor and impersonator and narrator on many a Doctor Who Target novelisation.
So, Jon, what was your first Target book? Do you remember?
I think it was Doctor Who and the Cave Monsters. I remember it in the library at school, and there was geography books, and there was, books that connected to the RE lessons, and there was textbooks and things like that. But in the middle of it was the interesting one that I really wanted to get to, and that was Doctor Who and the Cave Monsters. And so wonderful that these Target novelisations, as we've said many times, they were the only other way that you can get an extra fix of Doctor Who in this era, in the 1970s, before iPlayers, before DVDs, before VHSs. These novelisations were the only way you could get an extra fix. And it was so exciting. On the back of the Doctor Who monster book, that sort of magazine almost, I remember all of the fantastic Chris Achilleos illustrations that just spoke the Target novelisations, and they just summed them up, these posters for the stories, and it was so exciting, and you just ran towards them. But yeah, the Cave Monsters was my first one.
Amazing. And I'd imagine then that set you off very quickly to get your own collection at home.
Yes, it did. It did. The Sea Devils was one I wanted. The dinosaurs, clack, clack. I wonder if it was Chris Achilleos, the great fellow who invented that word. It might well have been. I always loved, not only did I read the books, but I loved to draw the covers. It was great to get your felt tip pens and your coloured pencils that your Auntie Hilda gave you for your birthday, and to try to draw your own version of the covers. I used to love putting different monsters together. I used to love putting sea devils with Zygons and with dinosaurs, and wondering how they would all work together. I loved those. The senses of collaborations that you haven't seen on the TV. You could draw them all your own. This was, wonderful ways that we kept ourselves entertained and inspired before scrolling and screens and such things. You had to be very inventive.
Sea Devils and Zygon sounds like such a Big Finish story waiting to happen.
Yes, I think it. Why don't we pitch that? Why don't we pitch that?
We both know a man who knows these things and can sign them off, so...
Yes. I'm trying to think if they could, maybe they could finish on a song. You say potatoes, and I say potatoes. Let's call the whole thing off.
The Doctor musical is sorted.
Yes, and it's cleared my throat as well.
Even better. So, did you get a bit of a surprise when you were asked to become involved with the reading range, or was it one you'd asked if they might be interested in you joining the family?
Oh, I was delighted to be asked. The Ark in Space was the first one that I was invited to do by Michael Stevens, and we had a coffee just to talk about the logistics and possibility. But I was absolutely delighted to do that. Never forget that. Characters I knew really, really well. Tom Baker's Fourth Doctor, I'd done a rather exaggerated impersonation of the Fourth Doctor in quite a few Dead Ringers sketches. But that was stretched to somewhere over here, stretched into the great sort of velvety boom. But for the Ark in Space, you had to dial it down and make it more realistic, akin to the dialogue of the program. Puny, defenseless bipeds, they're indomitable. And you had to go into that mode, which was a really fascinating thing to do, a wonderful way to play it, which took you away from the exaggerations of a comedy sketch and takes you into the sense of the more realistic, the theatre of the mind.
I think that very quickly your readings became so popular, and then I think it'd be fair to say that The Five Doctors is the one that really changed things for a lot, and suddenly Big Finish were knocking on your door for the brig.
That was the one. Michael was always very generous in the chats we had. I did mention some of my favourite stories, such as Death to the Daleks and The Five Doctors, and Michael was very kind to let me have the opportunity to narrate them, and it was fantastic homework going back and watching the episodes again ahead of the narrations. And yes, I think when they were thinking that it was about time to bring back the Brigadier, and there was chats going on about how that would be done, and I think it was Nick Briggs and David Richardson who just happened to, I think they just happened to hear the Five Doctors novelisation. Now, there I was with the Brigadier. You attract trouble, Doctor, you always did. I assume well, not expected to win. What, live forever, never die? All of those familiar words, all of those familiar phrases. I've watched those since it was transmitted in 1983. And yes, they just happened to hear that and thought, well, let's try this route then. And that was how my playing the Brigadier with Big Finish came about, and what a joy it's been. I did a story yesterday, in fact, only yesterday.
Ooh, I won't ask any more because obviously we both signed the Big Finish NDA, so we can say no more, Governor.
Yes, exactly. There is something, but we can't say more than that, no. Geneva Secret Act and all that business.
So, what's your mode of preparation for it? Is it a case of watch the video or DVD or indeed iPlayer where it exists, and just to try and capture the spirit of the voices, or for some cases do you like to go off and do your own?
I do like to watch the episodes again in the preceding weeks up to the recording and just get the feel of it. Remind yourself how you feel when you watched those episodes, and then try to infuse that feeling into the narration. And then get the digital copy, start to annotate it in all the different colours. John Pertwee's Doctor is always a rich emerald green that I colour in the dialogue with. Tom Baker's Dr. Always, a wonderful sort of Rioja red wine shade matching the colour of the corduroy jacket. And so on we go like that, and just get the feeling. I remember the first story that I did, the Ark in Space. It was quite challenging doing an audio book because I was so used to reading a comedy sketch or an advert that's over in 30 or 40 seconds. To get into the mode of being in a TARDIS-like room in a Croydon audio recording studio and read the entire book, all the 100-odd pages of it, was quite a new thing to get used to. Can be quite intense until you're used to it. Then you get your method, then you get your rhythm of getting through a chapter, and then a tea break, 2 more chapters, then your lunch break, and so it goes on. You break it up into those sections, and you find your rhythm with it. But it's a very joyful way to immerse into some of your favourite stories.
I think there's a real joy in hearing them when you're doing them, particularly when you're getting to do the 3rd and 4th Doctors, the ones you grew up with.
Yeah, oh yes. Not only are you reliving the story again, but you're just giving your own spin on it, and a chance to impersonate some of those characters who are just so memorable, but have never really been perhaps impersonated before. Belial, the Exelon, this subterranean Exelon. Please, I mean you no harm. I will help you if I can. Or Lynx, the Sontaran, Kevin Lindsay's fantastic performances. You will monitor progress rates on the input panel against the programmer. It is well I need not spend more time among you. And these wonderful characters. I remember in Death to the Daleks, the character played by Duncan Lamont. There are people I don't even know. I would too. Galloway. I love the voice of Galloway. I love these wonderful characters that you remember so well, to portray those. Some of those tucked into the archive. Very special.
Very much so. Good old Dan Galloway there.
Yeah, Dan Galloway, yes. Yes, you would have spared us a few bruises if we'd shaken hands the first time we met.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, that doing this as a fan, you're doing it not just as a professional actor, but you have that extra love because you know these books, you read them when you were younger.
Yes, yeah, that's right, and it gives another dimension to the experience of them, and you want to share that. You really want to share that. I think I put on a different voice for the narrator as well. It's not just my relaxed Lancastrian tone. I tend to go over somewhere here, something that resonates with the atmosphere, something that sounds in this kind of mysterious gravitas. I think this is the place that I go. It's perhaps the voice that I would use if I was playing the Doctor myself. That kind of thing. These are the atmospheres you build together. And yes, it's an intriguing world to occupy.
Of course, you may have started with Ark in Space, but I think you're now the person with the most reading credits to their name.
Oh, I think, yes, it's... I think it's me and the wonderful Jeffrey Beavers. I think we're about even on it, something like that. So that's wonderful company to be in with Jeffrey. But yes, I think it's been fabulous to do. I'm just trying to think of some more Death to the Daleks, and I've always loved doing some of those more avant-garde stories as well, such as the Time Monster. To have those pass through your filter, and the bird made of a collection of car wash sponges and curtains, to sort of narrate that in a mysterious gravitas sense, to try and take it to the theatre of the mind. When the BBC budgets could get you so far, it's nice to take them on and let the theatre of the mind make it a bit more cinematic,
Yeah. Are there any that you didn't do that you would love to have done?
Yes, well, some of the stories were already well sort of beautifully and preciously narrated. Pyramids of Mars, I think Elizabeth Sladen did that one so beautifully. But yeah, the Pyramids of Mars is a lovely story that it would be wonderful to get your teeth into. The Three Doctors as well, Katie Manning, who stunningly and infectiously, joyfully narrated that. Some of them were already taken. So it's nice to listen to those. It's nice to listen to those versions. It's nice to be on the listening end as opposed to the narrating end as well.
Yeah, very much so. And of course, there are still a few things like the Paradise of Death, the Ghosts of Endspace, still waiting to be done. So who knows? You may get to do them. Get more Third Doctor in there.
Yes, is that right? Were they turned into Target novelisations?
Yes, they were done around 93, 94, 96.
Oh, yeah, I remember they were audio dramas. I bought them on cassette.
Yes.
I bought them on cassette. I still have them. But yes, novelisations. Indeed, that might be one to lobby Michael on. I might send a sneaky email there.
Fantastic. Well, John, thank you so much for sharing your memories of Target books and working on them.
Oh, it's a great pleasure, Kenny. Thank you for inviting me on.
Thank you so much, John, and a real joy.
Great, yeah, it's terrific to hear from him. He's a true fan.
He is. He absolutely is. So suppose that now we've got here to this end point. So what sort of made you pick sort of like the release order that we did, mixing up Doctors and eras and such like over the years?
It was always striving for a good spread during a year, and that's a spread of stories, eras, types of story, but also readers. So trying to have, we've more or less published, I would say on average 9 or 10 novelizations a year, give or take a few. And so during any one year, I didn't want to have too many read by the same readers. I didn't want to have too many by the same authors. Not too many Dalek stories, not too many stories set on Earth. Lots of different factors to consider. And there was at one point in the early years, I used to try to schedule stories set in snowy conditions or icy conditions round about Christmas time, which I don't know if anybody ever noticed that, but I just think that was quite nice to listen to a really wintry story in the depths of winter. And then so that was really just trying always to get a spread of eras and stories and readers and writers. And occasionally, of course, it was dependent on who was available to record when. And then in latter years, we've had the benefit of the new novelisations coming along from BBC Books. And we're not including them in this celebration because I wanted to look at it as a complete run, as I was saying. And after Rose, the novelisations become sporadic. At the moment, who knows? Let's hope all the gaps get filled and we have a complete run of novelisations as well. But we've had the benefit of those coming along, so we've been adding those into the schedule as well, which has extended in many ways the run of the original novelisations as well.
Yeah, well, we know Joe Lidster's got Aliens of London World War III on the way as a Target paperback next year, so that just leaves a little gap in there with The End of the World and The Unquiet Dead, so that could run through up to Dalek. So
absolutely,
yeah, let's just tell Steve Cole, get them done so we can continue that expanded run.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great fun, isn't it, to just contemplate that sort of continuity all the way through.
Yeah, I'm sure there are people out there who are making little charts with what's been novelised, still needs to be done, and want those blocks to join. I'm like that with our Power of Three audiobook club, looking at new adventures. So I've got them colour-coded blue if I've approached the author and they've said yes, yellow when it's recorded, green when it's dropped. So I've got a nice little run ongoing.
I should think you have to have multiple schedules for all your various strands of pods.
Yeah, that's very true. I just I just don't like to think about it too much, or else my brain will go. I suppose something that you mentioned there is the fact this run goes from the Daleks through to Rose, and it would be remiss of me not to ask about the situation with an unearthly child.
Yes, well, there's not a great deal I can tell you that isn't perhaps already known. For rights reasons, we're currently unable to publish An Unearthly Child in whatever form. It is the case that in 2013 we recorded a brand new novelisation of An Unearthly Child, which I'd commissioned Nigel Robinson to do. Nigel, as you know, had written several target books based on stories from earlier in Doctor Who's run. He wrote The Censor Rights and others. So I asked if he'd be interested in doing An Unearthly Child. I set him a challenge of somehow making An Unearthly Child and Doctor Who and the Daleks cohesive. By that I mean, as we know, Doctor Who and the Daleks has its own unique way of starting the whole Doctor Who adventure, and the way that the Doctor meets Ian and Barbara is totally different to how it happens on TV in An Unearthly Child. So that was one challenge I set for Nigel, and he rose to the occasion admirably. But sadly, ultimately, at that time, there were several factors in the mix which meant that publication didn't go ahead. It was recorded by William Russell, but at the moment we're unable to do anything with that recording.
Thank you, Michael. Just to clarify that, it's always good to know and hear it firsthand. So here we are, we're reaching the end, but as we've said previously in Power 3, work continues on other things. You've got Slipback and the Pescatons underway.
Yeah, that's right. Although this is the culmination of that unbroken run of TV novelisations, there were several target books which were based on radio dramas and missing stories, the stories that never got made for what was then going to be season 23. So yes, we're continuing with those. That will take us through to the end of 2026 at least. And then what lies beyond is yet to be confirmed, but I very much hope that there will be a successor to this lovely range, and more titles for people to enjoy listening to, because I think it's become an important part of some people's daily routines.
Most definitely. And I've been the last few mornings I've been re-listening to Corpse Marker.
Terrific.
Such a good reading, and it's just been nice to go back, and I think after that I'm going to go and do Shakedown, just doing sort of something different, just to it's a nice way to be able to have a full-length book or original novel on the move. So that's my current listening.
Yeah, well that's great. I mean, it's great that you should mention those, because we've got a good sort of two handfuls of those BBC Books original novels that we recorded a while ago, and I'd like to think that there's opportunity for doing more of those, and indeed some of the Virgin new and missing adventures as well in the future.
Lovely. And can I also just say what a fantastic release What Still Remains is. I have been listening to that over the last few days, and from the out my walk, Sophie Aldred, brilliant reading, and Adam Christopher, what a fantastic script.
Isn't it great? It's a really taut thriller, isn't it? And it's also a good character piece, I think.
Very much so, and putting Ace front and centre, and love it. Well, Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to travel through the last 20 odd years of your work.
You're really welcome, Kenny. I've really enjoyed having a chat about this range. I mean, we could talk endlessly, I'm sure, about it. but I love the fact that it's there now. It will be there, forevermore. And it's nice just to celebrate this moment. So thank you for helping us do that.
You're very welcome. Now, I was just thinking, normally I would ask you for a tune to play out on, but it's now come back into my head. So do you think it'd be appropriate to play out with the music from a rival audiobook publisher, that Pickwick theme that they used on State of Decay?
I think it would be cruel and unfair of you to do that. However, I can't think of anything more appropriate. So go for it. We just have to give people sleepless nights.
Yeah, let's get it into an earworm into their brains.
Yeah.
Never lose
nothing at all. There's nothing at all to do with this rage that we've been celebrating today, but it's kind of the grandfather, isn't it, or the great grandfather of it? So yeah, go for it.
Yeah, double cassette release of State of Decay, read by Tom Baker. So why not? Again, Michael, it's been a real pleasure, and hopefully speak to you very soon about what happens next.
Brilliant. Okay, cheers, Kenny. Thanks for that.
You're very welcome. Bye, everyone.
The Doctor